Good afternoon. We are going to wait a few moments for the participants to join us. My name is Justice Barnes, and on behalf of the Association of Justice and Treatment Professionals, welcome to the third plenary of the 2023 Justice and Treatment Partnerships Conference. Before I proceed, I would like to indicate that this conference has been made possible by the participation of a contribution of a number of persons: Brian Cooper, Aline McGinty, Megan Oliver, and Carol Sinclair, and myself are your planning committee members. I, Justice Barnes, I am chair of this conference. The Association of Justice and Treatment Professionals tries to provide an environment where experts and persons with lived experience could share their best practices to help us all learn about how we can optimize our various programs and efforts in areas where justice and treatment intersect. What I can indicate is that whilst we welcome all these comments and bring all these comments to you, we don't necessarily endorse those comments, but we try our best to ensure that there's a forum where these ideas can be shared. Mm-hmm. Also, during the course of the presentation today, you will notice that there's a Q&A button, and that is where we recommend and really suggest that you send in your questions for our esteemed experts. Today, the topic of the plenary for this afternoon is the impact of trauma on the lives of Black teens. And your host today is Sandra Thomas. She is going to be moderating today's activities. And what I can tell you about Sandra Thomas is that she recently retired from a distinguished career with the Federal Civil Service. And during that period of time, she built a reputation for excellence, equity, and fairness as a criminal prosecutor. She was senior counsel with the Public Prosecution Service of Canada in Toronto, where she practiced criminal and constitutional law for 30 years. Sandy received a Bachelor of Arts honors degree in music from York University, a Juris Doctor from Rutgers University, School of Law, Camden. She was called to the bar in Ontario in 1992 and is a former member of the bars of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Sandra is the founding president of the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers. Now, during this presentation and in the comments that I have presented to you, I have referred to a number of persons, including Sandra Thomas, who have generously given of their time to help us learn from our experts. And today we'll be learning from Norma, Nicholson on the topic that you see on the screen. The full biography of all of these persons can be found at the www.justicetreatment.org website, and you can go on that website to learn more about Sandra and also about the speaker, Norma Nicholson. So without further ado, I will turn the proceedings over to Sandra Thomas to guide you for the next hour and a half or so. Sandra Thomas.
Thank you very much, Justice Barnes. I would first like to acknowledge the land that we are on. I am speaking to you today as a settler from my home in North York, which is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I wish to pay my respects to the many Indigenous people who live and work here today. I acknowledge that many of you have faced the pain of racism in your own ancestral homeland. My parents came to Canada from Trinidad and Tobago, which at that time was a British colony, and prior to that was a Spanish colony. I imagined that at that time they had no idea of the colonialism and racism that the First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Black, and other people of color faced in this land. As I reflect on the purpose of today's event, which is to address the impact of the trauma on the lives of the Black male adolescent, I am making my commitment as a settler to work hard to disrupt and dismantle colonialism. I also want to say the following. This year, namely 2023, Canada marked the 28th official Black History Month in February. What many Canadians and Ontarians don't realize is that slavery was practiced in Canada and throughout the British Empire, including Trinidad and Tobago and many of the other West Indian islands until outlawed in 1834. Therefore, I acknowledge and pay respect to the enslaved peoples bought and sold into forced labor in this land. I honor all the descendants of the victims and survivors of the transatlantic slave trade. And now I will introduce our distinguished panelist, Ms. Norma Faye Nicholson. Norma is a 4-time published author, speaker, educator, youth and adult mental health advocate. Ms. Nicholson is also a retired nurse with a BA in sociology and psychology, as well as a master's in adult education. She is definitely a recognized public speaker. She addresses the needs of the vulnerable and at-risk teens and their families. She has over 30 years of public service experience. During that time, she has spent most of her time motivating and mentoring families and youth to transform their mindsets to see the world in a positive light. Due to her vibrancy and her catalyst for community growth, which is undeniable, she has been recognized on many occasions for her mentorship, her guidance, and her advocacy. Most recently, she was recognized as one of the 100 accomplished Black Canadian women in 2018. Norma is highly engaged in community volunteer work, and that is exemplified by the fact that she is the immediate past chair of the Region of Peel Police Services Board. She is also the past president of the Alzheimer's Society of Peel. She is currently a member of the Mississauga Arts Council. She is secretary of the board of directors for the St. Luke's Seniors Residence. She's an advisor to the Free for All Foundation Board. And on top of that, she is an ardent volunteer at Associated Youth Services of Peel. I'm going to hand you over to Norma.
Thank you so very much, Sandra, and welcome to the participants today. As you look at the topic, which is trauma, I just want to give you a safe space to be in today. So many of us, our lives have been impacted by trauma. So welcome to a safe space. Parts of this discussion may inadvertently trigger trauma for you, but do talk with someone. The topic is very complex. I choose to focus on the Black male adolescent because of my lived experience to see how they are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. So please listen in. Please prepare to ask any questions you would like. And I think our adolescents will truly need our support to grow into maturity. So today I just want to point out that some of these illustrations were done by a young lady called Hedy. And welcome to an hour of expansing knowledge. So I would like today to review the different kinds of trauma, the normal male adolescent development, and across all cultures, all realms of life, normal adolescents have many similarities. I also want to review, quote unquote, the normal Black adolescent male development. I'd like to share with you examples of root causes of the traumas in Black male teens, the systems that intensify that trauma, and also from your understanding, what could we do as a society, having sat for an hour and listening on this discussion? So objectives and outcome I would like you to take away is increasing your knowledge a bit about the root causes of trauma in Black teens. Sharpen your skills around the effects of trauma on their behaviors, and also become more aware of the negative systemic impacts that produces trauma in these teens. So let's look at children aging into adolescence. While you're sitting there as the participants in today's discussion, please take a few minutes and recall your adolescent years. What were some of the things you did? What was really fun for you? How did you manage friends and parents? How did you manage decision-making? How did you manage consequences, or did you ever think about the consequences of your actions when you were an adolescent? So I'm looking at the age group 11, 12, up to about 18. Though research has shown that most male, they really mature from adolescence when they're about 25 years of age. Females tend to mature, and blame the researchers. That's not coming from me. So one of the things, I have children and I can think back to their adolescence. I teach in the public sector and I can think of the adolescents' behaviors that I have seen there. So can you place even one or two things that comes to mind in the Q&A box? I'm so sorry we're unable to use the chat today, but I will say a few things and I'll wait to see a few that you suggest in the Q&A. So think of adolescents you have met. They have boundless energy. They are so creative. There are some that says they want to go to the moon and they have no idea as yet how they will get there. There are some adolescents that present very risky behaviors. So if you think of listening to the news or reading some of the stories in the media, there could be a 15-year-old that got the car keys for his parents while they're sleeping, and they drive around the block until an officer realizes this is that teen driving this vehicle so fast around the block. When that teen is stopped and questioned, has no driver's license, just felt that at that moment, not thinking of the consequences, that they could actually take their parents' car and drive it around and maybe park it and go back to bed without their parents knowing. Think of the times when adolescents are sticking to their friends, their peers. They don't always listen to what their parents are saying to them. In fact, during childhood and into young adulthood, the adolescent years are the times when teens have more conflict with their parents. They think they know it all. They will say, "Oh, Mom, you're telling us about the time when you were growing up. We don't want to hear that." And of course, parents want to have a relationship and discussion with their teens. So oftentimes it is a conflictual situation because they want to be with friends. They want to go wherever they want to. Some of these teens sometimes break curfew. So maybe another time we could talk about how you get your teens to develop curfew time with you so they don't break it. They are the times when they may even start smoking because their friends are. They may even have risky behaviors, and this is normal adolescent development. Risky behavior like trying a glass of wine or stronger alcohol. They may even smoke marijuana or test out drugs. Is this resonating with anyone about their adolescence? Sandra, can you see anything in the Q&A? Ah, there's
Oh,
someone.
yes. I see a thumb.
Yes.
Oh, it
So
resonates, certainly.
there is someone who
Oh, yeah,
identifies.
definitely.
Yeah, so what happens though when these bounding energy, creativeness, even the way they're dressed, you wonder, a teenager is going to school and today's cold and, oh, my friends are wearing a sweat top, so I'm not going to bother wearing a jacket. Those are real normal developments. As these young people experience puberty, their body grows, their minds expand and become more creative. And that's the first time like a male may shave, maybe looking for a girlfriend, maybe thinking, oh, I'm a man now. Normal adolescent. I think I went to that slide already. Okay, so now I want to look at the normal adolescent for Black teens. If anyone has heard about Usain Bolt, a runner from the island of Jamaica, because he was so tall and muscular, there were actually reporters who went to the island to find out what was he eating, why he was of that muscular, tall build. And yet he was older than an adolescent. So remember the age group that I'm bringing to you today. So for a normal Black adolescent, they are criminalized from every aspect of their being. Just the music they may play, just the hoodie that they may wear. They do not plan to go and rob a store when they wear a hoodie sweat top. Just think of them being in the stores. They go to pick up a pack of cigarettes because now they feel they can smoke like all adolescents. And the security guard is walking around and they feel like they're being checked. They are not being recognized as a human being. Think of that Black body in the male teen, how tall that person is, how the voice is just changing. And that person may feel, I am really being policed by society. So people are walking on the street at night and they see a group of Black teens talking together, waiting for a bus. And because of the African background, where they group together like a village to learn from each other, they are seen as planning something criminal. I have a slide coming up where I will talk about two teens who were standing, and this is a real story, teens who were standing at a bus shelter. And what happened to the Caucasian teen versus the Black teen? No gathering in low-income neighborhoods. You know that a lot of our Black teens, some were born in Canada, many have traveled from several parts of the world to come and live with their family. In their countries of birth, for those who were not born in Canada, they're outside even on a school night. They get together and they play a ball game with a bright street light. They are not being policed because parents say, you come in by this time, you get up at this time, do your chores before you go to school. Here in Canada, and I'll think of low-income neighborhoods in Ontario, where those young Black men get together, the adolescents, they are policed. In 2011, there were 4 teens who were getting out of their low-income housing to go to an after-school program. They were stopped in their own neighborhood to say, where are you going? One 16-year-old had attended educational sessions and he was very familiarized with the questions that were to be asked of him by police officers. And he responded, please tell me why you're asking me the question. This is where I live. And from past experiences, negative experiences with officers, this 16-year-old got very upset, started arguing back and forth with the officer. All he was doing was trying to stand up for his right, but he was arrested for assault, and his 3 friends were so traumatized they were unable to attend the after-school program. So even in their own neighborhood, they are not allowed to gather without someone saying, What are they planning to do? Think of the Children's Aid Society that is sometimes called child welfare. It is this age group that has conflicts with parents. And an example again may be a 12 or 13-year-old that was brought to Canada to join his parents. He's loving to be in Canada, but he misses his friends and maybe a grandmother he lived with. So he's already entering the country as being traumatized because he no longer has the connection to the folks he had for 13 years. So then he now has this conflict with his parents in Canada who say, you cannot be outside when it's dark. You cannot have all those friends. I need to know every one of your friends, which is a good thing, except it may be said in a threatening way, though parents will believe it's coming across as loving. This teenager goes to school and the teacher says, "Oh, John, you don't look very happy. Did you want to go to the guidance counselor and say why you're not focusing in class anymore?" And he goes to the guidance counselor and say, "I don't want to live with my parents anymore because they don't understand me. We don't get along." And yes, the guidance counselor must refer to the children's aid when there seem to be conflict and neglect in the home. So the children's aid is called. This young man is removed from his parents' home. Envision that trauma. What I'm suggesting is that the Children's Aid Society should have some kind of resources to work with that family and that young person and do not move him away from his home. So he's been re-traumatized and triple traumatized by moving to live in a foster home. And I will later speak about how the trauma that's impacting him will lead from the Children's Aid Society right into the criminal justice system. Let's go to the school. Greater numbers of suspensions and expulsions from our schools for our Black male teens. Anyone want to throw in the Q&A as to why this would happen?
Well, I would like to know why it would happen. If you have some kind of inkling, I have my own ideas as to why it would happen.
Share one with us. Share one with the folks who are listening in today. What's one reason why large numbers of our young male Black males are suspended or expelled from school, and some of them are even suspended while they are sitting in the classroom?
I just think that there is a disconnect between a lot of these young people, some of whom have come from various places, mainly in the islands, Africa, and are immigrants here and are settling in for the first time into Canada, into Canadian society, and into a Canadian school. And the teachers don't understand a lot of these kids. They don't understand them when, when they speak, or they may misinterpret something that they say. They may view it to be rude. also some of these kids may get into, have conflicts with others, other kids, for various reasons. There's also racial issues, which are always there.
That is a big one, which it would
Racial
take a
issues.
full conference. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything in the Q&A?
Oh,
Exactly what you said, Sandra, that some of these young people, they speak English, but not very clear for
yeah,
our Caucasian teachers to understand.
yeah,
Some of them are coming from backgrounds with higher education, and
right.
they placed into ASL, ESL classes, makes them very angry.
I noticed in the Q&A, Norma, that
Yes,
Arlene said, and
yes,
unfortunately, I missed this. The risky behavior, when you were talking about the normal adolescent, so to speak, the risky
right.
behavior such as smoking, drinking, taking parents' car is normal, but it is seen as different depending on your skin color. It's criminalized with Black youth.
Yes, thank you very much. And that's why policed by society and our justice departments,
Yeah,
institutions they are,
yeah,
Black teens are treated very differently, very different. And thank you. Larger numbers of suspension and expulsions. I want to encourage parents of Black teens to get to know their school and the teachers, and to also share the good things about their teenagers, help them learn so that they can reach their potential.
right,
Behaviors are seen as beyond redemption. So a Black teen gets into a conflict at school, for example, where he feels he's being bullied. He gets into a fight. And who gets called? The police gets called because the teachers feel he's so big, they don't want to approach him, though he's actually a child. And when the police comes to help what the situation is, they are caught up in this web with the school and the teen, and the teen rather ends up being incarcerated. For he's the victim. He's the victim.
right.
So now this image is just showing all the fingers that are pointed at traumatized teens. And today I said I would focus on male because it's the time when they want to be grown up. They want to think of their future. They want to go to college. They want to have a girlfriend. They want to date. They want to get married. But girls are in similar situation. And I led a team of healthcare practitioners at one of our largest secure youth custody facility in Ontario. And there was overwhelming number of Black teens, not many females. So what makes trauma an event? It's part of everyday life. Why is it that trauma would affect some folks, such as our Black teens, whereas a Caucasian youth may experience similar trauma, but in a different way? So let me just reflect on trauma that can happen within a minute. You're walking around the schoolyard and you hear gunshots. And the Black teen has heard that before in his neighborhood. So he may run and hide, or he may run to the street to get away. The Caucasian teen may stand up and say, I wonder what the heck is happening. Because this may be the first time that the school has had this kind of traumatic experience. So when trauma happens, it's a threat to your physical and emotional well-being. It can be overwhelming. You get a feeling of fear, a lack of control, and you feel so vulnerable and helpless. Chronic trauma actually changes the way you view yourself and the world around you. And as I just mentioned, it could be a single event that you're totally traumatized. You hear all the time of someone speeding, losing control. That person may have been a teen who has a driver's license, lost control, and now that trauma impacts his life forever. So let's look at the construct of the family. Family comes from all over, as you say, Sandra, and it depends on how family and acquaintances have managed trauma in the past. Some young Black men have experienced trauma from childhood. When they come to live in Ontario or any other part of Canada, their trauma could be decreased but heightened by the institutions that they're now living in. So what are some of the root causes of their trauma? Community and school violence. Unsafe neighborhoods. Think of how Toronto is built with a lot of the low income neighborhoods all put together in those high rises. There's not much space for young people to go out and play ball and not getting on the street or getting into someone's way. Homelessness and poverty. You don't have to be uneducated to be homeless. If you think about the many homeless folks that are working very low wages, as most often are passed on to immigrants because they have no Canadian experience, they could be a paycheck or 2 paychecks away from being homeless. So in the homeless shelter, there are Black teens. It could be their immigration status. Did you know that in all cultures, including Black families, they have come to Canada to visit, and they have stayed, and the children they brought with them may have been 2 or 3 years old. They know nothing about the landing status of their parents or mother or father. These folks may have gone what is titled, quote unquote, underground to work. The children are allowed to go to school. And just as a reminder that in Ontario, all children are allowed to attend school, no matter whether they're landed or not. If you're a visitor, you are not allowed to attend school. And if you are being homeschooled, of course you are receiving education. They have gone through homelessness. They have gone through immigration experiences. In some homes, you have step parents. Partner violence has increased so much in our country that even our federal is looking at legislation to help decrease violence and abuse. And I'm sure most of our participants today have heard about vicarious trauma. So think of a community where there's been lots of gun violence. Parents are stigmatized if those are any of their children, and whoever is not even involved in that violence, they are being affected vicariously. I talked a bit about policed by society, and I just want to really emphasize that in every institution, in every organization, in every country, we have awesome, caring, compassionate individuals. I went to high school in Canada, and I would not be sitting here today if I did not have a compassionate, caring Caucasian teacher. There is what we call bad apples in every organization, and you will find that there are awesome police officers that do so much in their community, but there are others that do not understand the behaviors of Black teens. They criminalize those behaviors because they see them walking in groups, their heads are covered with hoodie, and they are talking with each other. Physical, sexual, emotional abuses are sometimes not shared at all because of the stigma that is surrounding that. So you could have a teen that has been abused, whether emotionally or sexually, and they do not want to tell anyone. But after they have carried that within their brain for a while, then it really comes out in behaviors that society is not able to understand. So this is just an image that it looks like a normal family of a mother, father, and two children. And they have experienced vicarious trauma in their community. They are frightened. They do not want to go outside when it's dark. They walk with their children to school and pick their children up from school. And trauma is so lasting in your brain because your brain never forgets. The youth encounters with the justice system, the new immigrant and precarious immigrant youth. So the precarious immigrant youth would be that youth I spoke about earlier, whose parents may have come to Canada. They have no knowledge whether they're landed immigrant or a citizen. They go to school. They are encouraged by wonderful teachers, because we do have wonderful teachers that say, you are doing so well. Let me help you get those papers to go into college. And then that young person may say, no, my mom doesn't want me to do that, only because they are now finding out that they don't even have a health card. So now their friends are moving on to reach their potential, and they have to go in a corner because of what parents inadvertently did prior to they becoming a teenager. I talked a bit about the youth in the school systems, and they are managed quite strict. Critique. My own daughter in the school system when she stood up and put her hand up to answer a question asked by the teacher. At that point, the teacher says, "Sit down. You have answered too many questions." She never tried to answer another question in grade 10, no matter how much we worked with her. Felt ashamed and humiliated. I talked about the youth in the Children's Aid Society, and all these, the encounters with the justice system, the new immigrant youth, the youth in the school system, the youth in the child welfare system, they experience trauma of oppression because they feel helpless and hopeless in terms of what can they do.
Norma, this is
Yeah.
Sam. Before you go on, I just want to say something, add my own little tidbit regarding the youth in the school system and what happened to my sister and I when we were kids. This is a long time ago. I'm not going to date myself, but let's just say that I was in school. My sister was in grade 3 in a public school in Scarborough. And the teacher she had was definitely racist. We knew she was racist because my sister sat at the back of the class. She never opened her mouth. She never tried to answer questions. And the teacher was always complaining to my parents about her. So one day, when my dad went to the school to meet with this teacher, and the teacher was complaining about my sister's inability to connect or to contribute anything to the class or whatever, to basically imply that she was dumb. Well, he said, well, why don't you try to make her feel, feel confident, feel good? Why don't you do something that will make her feel important? So the teacher did that. And this is what the teacher did. The teacher put my sister in as a Mary in the Christmas pageant, right? But she went and found another mixed race kid from another class, from another grade to be Joseph. And that's the end of that story. But I can tell you that things did improve for Beverly in the class once my dad went and met with the teacher. But you can see what her mindset was.
Yes. So thank you for that, Sandra. So here's an example, and this is a real situation, though it's an image. So there's a Caucasian and a Black youth. They're coming from a sport event, and if you look in the Caucasian youth's hand, he's handing some kind of cigarette or smoke to the Black youth and say, "Try it." Police officer is driving by doing his duty, and he sees these two teens, and he wants to know, it's late at night, what are they doing at the stop? And he can see that this youth has some kind of smoke in his hand. While the teen was able to toss it away, and the officer said, this is not a made-up story, "Go home, young man, as soon as the bus comes." And what did the Black teen do? He ran away. It is assumed that once he took flight and fright and ran, that he was guilty of something. So we truly, in these institutions, have to look at what is causing the actions of some of our youth. So the triggers, reminders of past traumatic experiences, they respond as if they are in danger. That alarm system in the brain is activated. And that individual, everything is filtered through the brain, and the brain never forgets. Even when someone who has been traumatized receives therapeutic help, there is some lingering of that previous trauma within that person's brain. They even have nightmares. They don't know what to do in life because they're so traumatized. They seesaw between independence and dependency. They're deeply upset, but don't want to talk about it. You have found that some Black teens that used to be the head of their household, because there's mom who works and the 15-year-old would look after his siblings, he starts behaving like a little child again. Sometimes they're self-absorbed and withdrawn from families. Parents are having a difficult time trying to understand why they're so upset and why their behaviors have changed. So look at this young man. He can't sleep. He is having such a difficult time, and he is afraid to ask for help because they're told to man up. I think I touched on the Children's Aid Society already, but I just want to point out from this slide that when teenagers are caught up, Black teens, with the Children's Aid Society, where foster parents may try to do their best, but they're not able to meet the needs of a Black teen, such as even their hair and their clothing and the kind of food that they eat, and also comparing them to other teens that they may be fostering, they are now re-traumatized. They get into fights. They break chairs. They throw things out the window because they feel like they are imprisoned. And what the foster mom or dad will do, which is all they can really do, because the need of that young person should have been addressed on entry to the home. They call the police officer, who has no choice but to take that youth to be locked up until something else can be managed for him. Can you imagine the mother? She's probably saying, oh my God, what did we get into? So I talked about the Children's Aid, the police services. I think, Sandra, you had said that I was the chair of our Peel Region Police Services Board in Ontario. And again, I want to emphasize that there are good police officers, but there are some officers who should not have chosen this for their career because they do not understand Black children. They have assumptions. They could look at them and assume they're walking along the street at 10 in the morning and they could be late for school because they had to look after a grandmother who has Alzheimer, and then they got their siblings ready for school, so they're late. But an officer may come along and think he's walking on the street looking at houses because later he may break into those houses, or he's now aware that there's nobody at home in the daytime. Please, they do not need to be policed by society and also by officers who do not understand them. We talked about the schools. I was doing a speaking engagement and a mother came to me afterward and she says, Norma, In my school, we need more Black teachers. They do not understand our children at all. And I talked about society, how they devalue the Black body, and they see Black youth as potential criminals. There's a university in New Brunswick where the professor had asked that this young man not be in her class because she's very frightened by him, and she wanted him out of the classroom. So I want to wrap up by saying, though the adolescent years present many challenges, teens must be given opportunities to be involved, and their voices must be heard. They need to have friends. They need to have a social life. They need to be free to make decisions in collaboration with parents and teachers. They want to be supported to grow. Please realize that they could be re-traumatized by these oppressive systems. And we must, as a society, refrain from assumptions, because looking at someone, you cannot tell, other than a lot of individuals who are not familiar with the Black body makes negative assumptions. So today I'm hoping I was able to convey a few of the reasons why the Black kids are traumatized. And they are even more traumatized when they are incarcerated. I will share my book on that topic in 2024. They are not to be incarcerated. 80% of incarcerated Black male has a mental illness, has been diagnosed with a mental illness. You don't incarcerate someone because they're mentally ill. So trauma is a leading factor affecting the health and well-being of African Canadians. And all of us here today can make a difference. Would you think of one thing I have said, please, that you will go away and reflect on and maybe share with someone? I thank you for listening, and I hope that I have stated this clearly. And if you ever want to connect with me, these PowerPoints will be placed on the Justice and Treatment webpage, and I'll be happy to come to a venue to speak more about this topic. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Norma, for that wonderful presentation. Please feel free to put questions in the Q&A. I do see a question from Arlene, who asks, do you think there is an adultification of Black youth within the criminal justice system, a beyond redemption approach? You've already touched on that, but I wish you.
But here's an example. A 13-year-old from an African country is incarcerated. He's being treated like he's 16 years of age. Several of us said he is not that age. He doesn't have a birth certificate because of the situation he was born in. And what we had to do was get the dentist to do pictures, x-ray of his teeth, to get them read and take them to the court, which was verified that the way his teeth were, they were teeth of a 13-year-old. Looks like a 16-year-old, talks and walks like a child.
Wow. Norma, I'd like to ask a question. it's kind of like a comment too. I used to do a lot of work at 311 Jarvis as a Crown Youth Court. And my experience with Children's Aid Society, in my view, was not a great one, because I saw that many of those kids who were in foster care or in group homes were charged with assault at the drop of a hat. And they kept being charged and recharged and coming back and back and back to court to face these criminal charges. They were, they may have not had any criminal charges when they went into the foster care system or the group home, but by the time they got out of there, they faced a lot of charges, because my experience was that I found that the kids were being, they called the police for every little thing, a little fight, whatever. These kids are charged with assault. Also, I found that the person, this is a long time ago, I'm sure she's retired by now, but the person who represented Children's Aid at court, because we did have a court person from Children's Aid, she was very anti-youth, in my view. Her view was that they were all criminals. And I found that very interesting, considering that, she was supposed to be from Children's Aid. But those are my two comments. I don't know.
And I'll take the opportunity before we wrap up, because we just have another 3 or 4 minutes. I'm looking in the chat here, and there's Melissa Yang, who is a wonderful coordinator at the AYSP, the Associated Youth Services of Peel, my favorite volunteer organization that I work with the children to prevent them getting into the youth justice system. So there's one of the programs by the AYSP's diversion, keep our children in the community. And what she says, I feel many teachers, adults might have preconceived notions of these youth that impact the judgment, and they automatically go to the extreme. Another person says, Colette, not falling in line with expectations, viewed as threatening, causing disturbance, lack of understanding on the part of the principals. I won't even touch on white supremacy. That is such. Then, and here another person says they're seen as troublemakers. They are children. And we as a society, we need to treat them as children. And I thank you so much for your comments today, because our school, our Children's Aid Society, is the pipeline to the justice system where a lot of Black youth are incarcerated.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. Norma, I just want to say one more thing. And that is,
We're almost out of time.
I know that, moderator. But the one more thing I want to say is, you mentioned you're having a book coming out.
Yes. I myself was very traumatized when I worked in the youth justice system because of the treatment that was meted out to Black youth. And remember this, the institution I worked in had 190 youth between the age of 12 and 18, because some were serving a last year. And of the 190 on the census most days, 120 or 140 would be Black males.
Wow.
I was totally traumatized. And what I want to say now, again, thank you to those officers who took care of those youth. Many of those caring officers lost their jobs.
Wow.
So end Black and minority youth incarceration will be published February 2024, along with the other 4 books I have that shows that you can make a difference.
That's wonderful. I'd like to thank you very much, Norma Nicholson, for this great presentation. I am sure it's sparked a lot of interest. It definitely generated questions and comments. And it, quite frankly, this is a topic that is not often addressed in a public forum. So again, I would like to say thank you very much, and thank you all for participating in this particular discussion.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Yes, have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.